Hi everyone. As you might know, we don't get any sort of funding from any wealthy benefactors, academic institutions, governments, or political parties. Our work is funded by you, our listeners and readers on Patreon. In return, our supporters on Patreon get access to exclusive content and benefits like ad-free episodes, bonus podcast episodes, and 2 exclusive Patreon-only podcast series, Fireside Chats and Radical Reads. So here's a little preview of our latest Patreon-only episode. You can join us, help support our work, and listen to the full episode today at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, 1,000,000 darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts grey are brightened by the beauty sun discloses, and the people here are singing bread and roses, bread and roses.
You know, I was friendly with the fellow temps and things, so we just kind of would chat about this, that, and the other, and so kind of started asking questions about our working conditions and pay and that sort of thing. And it turned out that even though we were all temps, all in the same kind of job, doing the same level of work, kind of admin, clerical work, basically, we were all getting completely different rates of pay. So we kind of thought, well, obviously, why don't we try and do something about this? So we all got together and said, well, whoever gets the most pay, let's say, well, let's talk to our agencies and the council and be like, we should all be paid this because we were all doing the same work, so we should get paid the same thing. So we did that, got back to our agencies, and that was successful. So it was a really small thing, but it was great for us because out of the 5 or 6 of us, all of us except one got a decent pay rise out of it. So it was like a good start. And then beyond that, while I was there was a big national public sector strike about pension cuts. This was in 2006. And so, like, as I said, I couldn't do much to support the strike generally, other than, you know, I was saying I wasn't going to go in. But although my manager, who was permanent, I was talking to her before the strike, and she was a Unison member as well. But as we were talking about it, she was saying, oh, I don't think I'm allowed to strike because I'm a manager. So I had to be like, okay, you're normally a manager, but you only manage me. You know,
let's not get too big for your boots, mate.
Exactly. It's like you're not the queen or something. Maybe the queen, maybe she's not supposed to go on strike. But also, even if you are a manager, like,
yeah.
What do you think this is? Like, yeah, you can go on strike. That's fine. And so again, like, I tried to talk to my fellow temps about it because when the talk of the strike started, the building I was in the union wasn't strong in that building, as you can probably get, you know, from the manager not knowing that they could, and the only union rep there not really being interested in building a union at work, but being more interested in building a left-wing political party outside of work, we can say. So the other temps kind of were talking about the strike in a bit like, you know, I think you've spoken about them before, about media images of what unions are like, thinking it would be kind of like images of the 1970s, these people trying to stop you at the picket line and shout mean things at you as you go in. So they were kind of talking about how they wouldn't care about a picket line. They would come, you know, they would defy it, as if that was like the rebellious thing to do, would be to defy a picket line. So, you know, I tried to talk to them about that and be like really no, like, you know, I mean, also all of the temps wanted permanent jobs in this place. They all wanted, because, you know, we were doing the same work as permanent people on less than half the money with no holiday pay, no sick pay, no pension or any of that. So it's like, we all want one of these jobs in the future. So if their pension is better, that means that our pension will be better when we get one. So we should try and help them improve their conditions. And also, like, if you actually want to be like rebellious and defy anyone, then you should be defying the government and the employers.
Yeah, exactly. You should defy your employer and defy the government rather than your workmates.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, on the day when the strike actually happened, I went to join picket lines, but not at my building because I was a temp and I lost a temp job previously for not crossing a picket line. So I went to a different building. So on the day, I don't actually know what happened with the other temps that went in, and also it's quite a long time ago. But I would be hopeful that some of them maybe didn't go in.
Yeah, they're or either that or they're all like, I don't give a shit about John. I'm not going to let him bully me into not crossing the picket line. But yeah, like, you know, it's
so that's not the most inspiring ending. Maybe it would have been better to make something up and be like, yes, and they flipped a police car outside the office and set it on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they carried me on their shoulders and they went, yes, John.
Yeah, like it was like that scene in June with Timothy Chabladou.
Also, sorry, just I want to, because I don't know, because there was the other story that you mentioned that I didn't actually ever know about. But are you telling me that at a previous job that you had, there was a strike and you were a temp and you didn't cross the picket line and you just stood outside the workplace, like, you know, on the picket line with the workers there, and then and like your employer just stuck their head out the window and was like, that's John. I'm getting rid of that guy. Well, you know.
I mean, basically, yeah, I was working as a temp at this. I was working as a temp in London at another office, and the union there started a wave of rolling strikes for like more maternity pay,
Right?
Like half day strikes once a week. And I kind of told my colleagues in my team that, like, yeah, I wouldn't sort of cross the picket line. And they were kind of like, I mean, yeah, like maybe you should though, so you don't get fired. Yeah. But I did, yeah, but I went and I joined the picket line and then I got fired. Although, like, weirdly, like there was, so basically like my immediate team and the manager, I had kind of two supervisors. They then went and complained to their like head of department and said, because they were both joining the strike, and they went and complained. And so then they got me like reinstated for like 3 days or something. And then like at the end of the week, they're like, okay, and now your contract has come to an end. You know, so it seemed like you're not being fired for not crossing a picket line this time, just your contract had come to an end. But it's like, I mean, I hadn't been told my contract was coming to an end, so I basically think they fired me again. Like they just waited a few days. But you know, I mean, it was only a temp job. Like,
so you were fired twice for not crossing a picket line.
Like, exactly.
So not only am I going to fire that guy, I'm going to rehire him just so I can fire him again. That red son of a bitch. But yeah,
you know, you can't get rid of me firing me just once.
Yeah, exactly. Fire me once. Shame on me. Well, no, the other way around. Fire
me twice. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll
but anyway, so like at some point, you were taken on permanently, and so yeah. So what was that like? And how did that?
It was amazing. I got hired, and I'm like, right, I'm getting ill. All the illnesses I've been putting off for like 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, I'm having all those illnesses now.
Yeah.
You know, licking doorknobs. For the Italian listeners, I'd open the window a crack when I'm in the car, you know, put the air conditioning on.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a niche joke.
I'm not sure how many Italian listeners we have. That's too niche.
But yeah, so how did that kind of change your organizing, and how did your organizing then sort of fit into the dynamics, the demographics of your new workplace?
Yeah, so the place I was working, basically it was a team of about 80 people. I was like the youngest person in the office. On my first day when I arrived, like, because the team, they work with young people, they work with clients. And I got there, and then people spoke to me afterwards, and they said when I arrived, they thought I was one of the clients. Like they thought I was one of the like young people who managed to turn my life around, kind of thing, you know. Also, you know, I was the youngest in the office, but also I looked like I was 12. So I did not start organising immediately. And also I was on probation for the first like 6 months. So I kind of kept my head down and made sure that I did my job well, especially as like I'm like not very good at being punctual.
Right.
Like I was about 45 minutes late on my first day. And pretty much after that, I was pretty much never on time a single day for the whole rest of my career. I'm not a morning person.
I feel like you are exactly the kind of figure that the right-wing press talks about when they talk about public sector workers. Turning up late, protected by union barons who you can't sack them because they're protected by the union. But so you spent the first 6 months trying to grow facial hair so that your workmates wouldn't think that you were a young person.
A young sort of client. And so I joined the union. Well, I was already in the union as a temp, but as an employee at least got time off to go to union meetings. I mean, there was only like big branch meetings, so I think it was only like 1 or 2 a year. But that was exciting to go to an actual kind of like union meeting with a bunch of other workers there. It was really exciting the first time that I went.
Was it though? Was it? Because I remember the first, maybe also like my first union branch meeting that I went to, and I remember a similar sort of feeling of being like, "Oh, this is going to be really exciting." But my union branch was a little bit anemic, and there wasn't all that much happening there, and also that feeling of so much of the branch activity not having to do with the workplace. That was what really hit me, and it took me a long time to get my head around it, even at first. That I was going to like branch meetings, because I was the shop steward at my workplace, but there was just this disconnect between what was going on in my workplace and what was going on in my branch. And I remember kind of being like, what, am I just getting an afternoon off work here? You know what I mean? That was but your branch meetings were different.
Well, it was an AGM, so it was like an all members meeting,
right.
And there were some local issue at the time, and there was like a national pay thing, so there were like 100 odd people there.
Wow,
that was just kind of exciting to see, because before I'd only ever known like one other union person in the building. And and here there was like,
tried to get you to hand out leaflets,
exactly, and sell papers. So, and here there was like 100, and the talk was about stuff at work primarily. So yeah, it was quite like exciting. I mean, also another thing is having this like permanent job was a very big thing for me personally, because I had been temping for so long with no sick pay and stuff. And one of my temp jobs, I got injured and had to go in a hospital and was off work for like months with no sick pay, and it was really bad. So I really wanted to make sure I didn't lose the job. So other than being timely, which is like, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that kind of thing, I was being like good other than that. And then after a while, basically my strategy was, well, I'll do this. I'll be late all the time. But then if it ever comes up, I'll just be like, oh, I thought I was on flexible starts,
Right.
That was my sort of strategy.
Perfect crime.
Yeah. So wanted to be very careful not to lose it. And also, like I said, I was the youngest person there, young white bloke. And most of the people in my team were, it was mostly women, mostly middle-aged, mostly parents, and about 50% of people of color, most of the people of color being black. So I wasn't like representative of the team as a whole. They were all a lot older than me and more experienced and had more responsibility in life and that kind of thing. So, it's not the kind of place where you can go in and then just start telling people what to do and be like, like, quote, what I don't like about some left, is when they talk about organizing people, going and organize, like you're kind of lining up your sort of soldiers and telling them what to do or whatever. You've got to pay your dues. So yeah, I was just sort of putting my head down, doing my job, basically learning as much as you can, getting to know everyone and just talking and listening, more just listening to people. understanding the connections between different people, understanding like where power lies in the organization and outside, the connections between the team and other areas, what managers do people like, what managers do people not like, who are kind of influential employees and who are people that keep themselves, and also go in team meetings, see like which people are like ask challenging questions in team meetings and things like that, and just kind of making notes and just hearing things about gripes and what are the kind of things people are complaining about. And at the same time, as a worker, trying to make yourself indispensable, like doing stuff to help out your colleagues so that you become popular in the office, but also kind of trying to get as much knowledge as you can to make yourself kind of indispensable, which is good for any worker anyway, because that's kind of what you want to not get canned, is to make yourself indispensable, and try and monopolize all kinds of information. So that's kind of what I was doing. And the team I was in was quite a horrible atmosphere a lot of the time, because the head of our department was a real bully. She was horrible, and nobody liked her. Like, as an example of how she was, like, once she wanted to have a go at me for something which was nothing to do with me, but she literally stood next to me, stamped her feet and screamed. That kind of childish behavior. And also people in the team would just like disappear. So they're people we work with for a long time, and then they would just never be seen again, because they'd been basically suspended secretly and then fired kind of in secret. So there was a lot of stuff people were unhappy with. And then I think it was probably after like a year and a half of being there that there was like a really key sort of incident in the team that everyone was totally up in arms about. And that's when it sort of changed things. So basically, the person I worked with most closely was a woman who had been there, like, she'd been in the department ever since it was founded. She'd been there over 30 years, and she was kind of like, she was an admin clerical worker like me. She kind of did my onboarding, and she was really well respected and liked by everyone in the team. She was kind of like the mum of the office, is how people thought of her and how she thought of herself. And one day, the department head had her demoted from her general job as a kind of office manager, administrator, to be her PA, which was a lower ranked job because council jobs have a job ranking system. So it was a lower ranked job. And she even like made this announcement in a team meeting, because I think at the same time also, someone was fired, someone was left. So she even made this announcement being like, well, bad news, like this person has left, this person has gone, because they don't say that this another person had left. But in positive news for the team, I've got a PA. And which was just so tone deaf, because the woman this happened to, like, getting demoted, because I tried to, talk to her about opposing it, because in a legal and contractual sense, it's not something they could actually do. And after I became a union rep, this happened to various people, and I was able to just stop it immediately just by writing an email, because they can't actually do that.
Yeah.
But she was not a member of Unison. She was a member of the GMB, which in some places in the UK is a good union, especially amongst manual grades. But the way the GMB functioned in my council was, it was mostly a union for people to join who wanted individual protections at work but didn't want to have to take part in Unison strikes, because Unison regularly took strikes for things like pay and against pension cuts, whereas GMB didn't. So it was a way they could feel like they got individual protection without having to take part in strikes. And that was the union she was part of, and they didn't do anything to give her any individual protection. And it was just so sad, because she was just like, she didn't even want to fight it, because she just felt so totally demoralized by it. She was totally like broken by the whole, she was just devastated really. And everyone was really upset. And especially with this other person who'd been fired at the same time, there was so much anger. And I kind of, at this point, I'd been there a year and a half. So I started to kind of be vocal about this sort of thing and ask really annoying, difficult questions to cause problems for management. just because I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm kind of a dick.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah.
A lot of the time, and I just quite like just being a dick. And so that's what I was kind of doing to management, but also in a way that they can't really get mad, by just asking kind of difficult questions that will cause them problems.
Do you think you could give me an example of one of these dickish questions that you used to ask?
Well, yeah, okay, sure. Here, like one example was our department head. Someone asked her in this team meeting, "Why is this person no longer with us?" Who'd basically been fired, and she said, "Well, it's not appropriate to comment on staffing matters in team meetings." So I just put my hand up and then was like, "So, if you said it's not appropriate to talk about staffing matters in team meetings, then why was the whole section before this you talking about staffing matters when you were talking about this new member that's coming in and this person who's leaving, a different member of staff?" So,
that is quite a dickish question, but I can imagine that she would have been sitting there fuming at you.
Yeah, exactly. It was obviously, it's also, it was also a dickish question because you can't give confidential staff information in a meeting, but everyone basically.
But technically,
but that's not what she said. No. So, people sort of snickered and then, some people came and spoke to me afterwards, and that was a good opportunity to have some conversations and meet people who also have issues with management and like challenging them. So a couple of people came to me after and they were like, "Well, why don't you become like a union rep for the team?" And one of the people that came to me was like a mid-50s black woman who was one of the people that came, and I kind of said, "Well, I knew that you could become a shop steward on a job share basis." So I kind of said, "Well, it's too much for me to do on my own, and I don't feel that I'm like representative enough of the team, and I haven't been here long enough, but if you want to do it on a job share, I'll do it on a job share basis with you." And that was actually a really great thing to do. And she agreed, and then we signed up and went from there basically.
As we come marching in the beauty of the day.
That brings us to the end of this episode preview. To listen to the full thing and help support our work researching and promoting people's history, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.